Good. How's everyone today? Good, good, good. Um, all right, so my plan for today is we're going to introduce interviewing and talk about the interview process, and then answer any questions you might have about that. And then we're going to go over the resumes that you have. So hopefully you brought a printed out version of your resume. If not, then I can pull it up on the screen. You'll just need to bring a piece of paper so you can make some notes about recommendations that I have for updating your resume or changing it. And then from there, you'll spend the next week revising and updating your final resume. Okay. um, and while people are working on their resumes or while people are meeting with individuals about their resumes, there is going to be a interviewing quiz on using the STAR method that we'll talk about. So you can work on that STAR method assignment during that process as well. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns. All right. What are y'all's thoughts, real quick, about last week? I know last week we finished that communication, all those exercises. We finished that pretty quickly. We wrapped up because we were running out of time. What are y'all's thoughts overall about that process, that activity? Did you learn something new about communication? What did you learn new about communication? How fast it moves. Absolutely. Good. What else? Okay, yeah, absolutely good. We use that in the live wire activity. Anything else? Anybody think it was a waste of time? You can be honest. What else? Any other kind of feedback about that? Was there something that one exercise was you found more valuable than the other? One that maybe didn't seem quite as valuable? Give me an opportunity to give me some live feedback. Okay, good. Excellent. Any other feedback? You're like, the faster you stop talking, the faster we get onto the subject, and the faster we get to go. What was the question? The question was the activities that we did last class about communication. Um, what did you find them beneficial? Not beneficial? Any feedback on that? Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right. So let's talk about the interview. Okay. Let's talk about the interview. All right. So the interview. How many of you have been to an interview before? Okay. Tell me a little bit about your interview experience. What was the experience like from start to finish? Anybody want to share? Nerve-wracking. Okay. Why was it nerve-wracking? Okay, good. I like what you said about preparing for the interview. And one of the things that stood out is when you said research the company. One thing that's important for you to know and remember is that when you are interviewing the company just as much as they are interviewing you. Because you may walk into an interview thinking this is your dream job, and you walk out of that interview and be like, I don't want to work for this company. Okay. So you are interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you. Okay. And so you can do a lot of the research on that company. I know when people get hired here at St. Philip's College, everybody, like all the full-time people that get hired here, typically will go through the final interview, and then that interview will include Dr. Lawston, who's the president of the college, the department chair, maybe the dean, the vice president as well. And one of the very first questions that's often asked is, tell me what you know about St. Philip's College. And if they can't answer that question, then that question of why do you want to work here is a little bit harder to answer, because typically you'd want to work at a place that aligns with your professional goals, that aligns with your professional values or your personal values. And so if you don't know anything about the company, then that tells that person that you haven't done really a lot of research, and you maybe aren't going to be a good fit for the culture of that organization. So doing research is really, really important. Okay. You can do research on company values. Like Anne-Marie said, the mission statement, the vision statement. You can do research on if they are active in the community. Do they volunteer at different places like Habitat for Humanity, or do they do volunteering at the food bank? Do they do stuff like that that maybe aligns with your personal goals of giving back to the community? You can achieve that through when you're working there with that organization. What else? Who else has interviewed before? Now there's no hands that go up because I have a follow-up question. Yes, go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Why was it awkward? Yeah. So what you now granted it's just two people, but when we have different, we have face-to-face or individual interviews. We also have what are called panel interviews. Okay. So panel interviews means there's more than one person asking you questions. Um, why is that? Why could that potentially be nerve-wracking? Okay, so you got to who do I focus on, right? I focus on the person who asked me the question. Do I address everybody? What happens? Well, what happens if you have five people as part of that panel? That could be really intimidating because you've got five people sitting across from you firing off questions, and you have to answer those questions. Okay. Well, yep. We'll talk about group interviews in just a second. Yep. So remind me about that. Let me write it here. Um, so with those panel interviews, it's important that you answer the questions to the best of your abilities. But typically in those panel interviews, they either have pre-assigned questions, so they're going to be asking you a specific question, but really it's a question coming from the entire group. Okay, so it's good to address and make eye contact with everybody during your answer, not just that one individual. But at the same time, if you're interviewing for like a senior leadership position, then there may be somebody from human resources asking you a HR related question, someone from accounting asking you a finance related question about your experience, right? And so those individuals might be the subject matter experts that type of question is important, that they understand that the type of information that you can answer the questions appropriately. Panel interviews can be intimidating because there is typically more people and you're sitting across the way. Okay. We'll talk about how we handle ourselves in an interview in just a second. Group interviews. What is a group interview? Has anybody ever been part of a group interview? Okay. Can you tell us about your experience?
It was for Whole Foods, and then also Central Market.
Okay.
It's like a competition.
Okay. So they have one person interviewing and then the multiple people in that are being asked the same question. Okay.
Yeah, it's like the HMG, giving just a rundown of the expectations and kind of seeing how we respond to certain
Yep. Okay.
things. It was a lot less like just answering the same old questions. Like, because I mean, I've had a million regular interviews too. Um, from property tax.
Right.
It was interactive, I guess. That they kind of wanted to see if you could, because if there's obviously it's a competition with the other people, but at the same time they don't want to see you like the, stepping over people, or trying to make them look bad to make yourself look better. So you gotta
Exactly.
come with them and compete.
Yeah. How you work in that group dynamic. Yes. Did you have anything else to add? Okay.
And let them do group discussion. And I'm going to become one of the interview and I participate in the conversation to see what everyone else is doing and take notes. Yeah. And he gave me a chart that to like look out for what quality he wants to see in this group conversation, and I consider it like a really
Awesome.
yeah, I'm a good five.
So yeah. So you've infiltrated the group, and so you're basically reporting back who has, if your boss is looking for someone who, like, can you give me an example of like a quality they were looking for?
And also give like a constructive thought. But he doesn't want to like trying to push the conversation and leading without giving any like actual key thoughts.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Because then that will then allow you to have a better idea of how they might act in a group setting on the job if they're on a group project on the job. Absolutely. Good. All right. So we have different types of interviews, the different formats. We want to research the company, we want to prepare for the interview. Okay. What are some other things you can do to prepare for the interview? What's that? You want to know how what the professional attire is going to be. Okay. So you typically want to dress one level above the position that you're going for. So if you've done your research on the company and you know how the frontline staff dress, then you might dress one level above that. Okay. Or if you're going for an executive position, then you definitely want to be in a suit. Okay. When I interviewed for this position 10 years ago, um, I remember I got a phone call from somebody to remind me how to dress professionally. And they said, don't forget to wear a tie. And I said, okay, does that mean a bow tie or does that mean a necktie? And he said, you need to dress more on the conservative side. So wear a necktie for the interview and save the bow tie for when you get the job because you don't know who's going to be on the panel and how they might interpret that. And so, I mean, obviously, I would hope that nobody would make a decision whether I wear a bow tie or I wear a necktie, but it's always a good idea to err on the side of caution and be more a little bit more on the conservative professional side of things. Um, so dressing, knowing what the attire is going to be. What else can we do to prepare for the interview? Yep.
Not like plan, but like kind of get an idea of what
Yeah.
like an example of a time show leadership skills, kind of examples like that.
Yeah.
That your biggest flaws are, but I can like really don't get too off guard.
Yeah. So there are certain questions that are maybe not always going to be asked in every interview, but the chances are of them being asked. Usually somebody is going to ask you why you've applied for the job, or say, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about your professional background. Okay. They have your professional background on your resume. They've seen your resume, hopefully. Okay. But when they say, tell me about your professional background, what are they doing? They're testing you. They're giving you that ability, that option to expand on your resume. There's only so much your resume can say, but they may give you that opportunity. We also call it your 30-second commercial. So think about like what we call your elevator pitch. Okay, between the first floor and the fourth floor of the elevator is about 30 seconds. So with somebody, if you meet somebody in the elevator and they say, tell me about your career goals, have an idea of what you can say in about 30 seconds, right? You can write that down and you can practice that. You can practice those types of questions. When you're preparing for the job, you might also prepare your answers for different questions based on your work experience. Yes.
Have a good story for why you left your last job, even like maybe you got fired, but you're gonna frame it in a different way.
Yeah. So one of the best ways to frame why you left your previous job is because maybe there's no room for opportunity for advancement. Okay. And so, for example, I talked about my last class very briefly. When I left Chester's Hamburgers, there was nowhere for me to go. I'd already learned every single position, opening and closing. And the only other way for me to go up was the manager's position. And no managers were retiring or leaving. So my opportunity was to go to TGI Fridays to learn how to be a server in more of a full service restaurant versus a quick service restaurant, right? And so that's always a good way to frame that, is that you wanted more opportunities to grow, more opportunities for professional development. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. So definitely, as you're preparing, have some questions, because the last question of the interview is probably going to be, do you have any questions for us? Okay. And if you say nope, then that doesn't always look the best. So it's a good idea to have some types of questions like, what does the average day of the person in this position look like? Okay. And that could give them an opportunity to say, you're going to come in at 9 o'clock, you're going to clock in, check out what your tasks are, you do your tasks, and you clock out. Okay. Or every day is different. We don't know what's going to expect. We're in hospitality. So you don't know what kind of guest is going to walk up to the front desk. You don't know what kind of guest is going to sit in your section. You don't know what orders are going to be coming in or how many people are coming in. So there's not really a way to say an average day. So that's always a good one. What does an average day in the position look like? You typically don't want to ask about pay quite yet. Okay. But you might ask about the benefits. What benefits are included with this position? Okay. It could be things like employee meals. It could be things like medical benefits, vision benefits, dental benefits, all those types of things. So I think it's appropriate to ask what the benefits are like. Okay. But have those questions written down. But the thing that I want to mention too about that demonstrates whether or not you've been listening or paying attention during the interview is that if they ask you a question that's already answering one of your questions, don't ask your question again. Okay. So if they answer a question during the interview and then you ask that same question, that's going to demonstrate to them that you're not paying attention to what they are saying. Okay. You also want to, if there are any questions that are unanswered in the interview, you might want to follow up with those answers. So I had an interview once where talking about event planning, and one of my favorite aspects about event planning is providing little touches of wow. And so one of the interviewers asked me a follow-up question. He's like, can you give me an example of a touch of wow? And I was like, I knew you were going to ask me that. I was like, the moment those words came out of my mouth, I was like, oh, he's going to ask me what a touch of wow is. I was like, and I can't think of anything right now. Now, fortunately, I knew that gentleman through networking, right? And so I could be a slightly a little bit more casual. But of course, then as I followed up, then I gave examples of a touch of wow to answer and follow up with that question. So when I wrote my thank you cards, anytime I write a thank you card, I do a wax seal on the back of it of the envelope. And so the wax seal was in the colors of the logo of the company. And then on the back of his card, I wrote touch of wow and drew an arrow to the wax seal. So that kind of answered the question. And so we have those opportunities. In also preparation, you might want to check the route that you're going to be driving. You may also want to know what the parking situation is going to be. When you are driving, or when you're whether you're taking whatever kind of transportation, whether it's public transportation or someone's going to drop you off, or you're going to drive and park, you want to know what the time frame is. Okay. And you want to visit during the same time as your interview. You don't want to, if your interview is at 8 o'clock in the morning, you don't want to go at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because traffic patterns are going to be different. Okay. And so it's really important that you are planning ahead. One of my favorite things, anybody in here, when you get nervous, your hands get like kind of sweaty? Anybody that ever happened to? It happens to me all the time. One of the things that I do is I just put my hand in my pocket for a brief second. And as I pull my hand in my pocket, I'm just kind of drying my hand off right before I shake someone's hand. Right. So I'm not going to go like this and then shake someone's hand. Okay. I just casually put my hand in my pocket just for a second, pull it out, and then shake somebody's hand. Okay. Or if you're there a little bit early, 10 to 15 minutes is all you need. Okay. Any earlier than 15 minutes, then those people may not be ready for you yet. And they may be rushed. Okay. And so 10 to 15 minutes max is what you need to be there early. If you have a moment to go to the bathroom, freshen up, paper towel on your face, maybe a little bit, maybe wash your hands, dry your hands really well. Those types of things you can do before an interview. The other thing that I want you to remember is that your interview starts the moment you walk in the door. So if you sit down and the first thing you do is you pull out your phone and you start looking through your phone, somebody is watching. It might be the receptionist or the secretary, and they're going to report back, oh, well, this person, the first thing they do is sit down and look at their phone. Okay. If you're applying for like a sales position and you have to go and meet clients, they want to know that when you go out to those companies that you are representing that company in a positive way. And it doesn't look very professional just to pull your phone out and start scrolling through. Okay. You might want to put your phone on silent, or you might even want to put your phone on airplane mode. So if you put your phone on airplane mode, there's definitely not a chance of it ringing or going off during your interview. Okay. After the interview, thank yous, whether it's an email thank you or a handwritten thank you card. Thank yous can be the differentiation between you and somebody else. Handwritten thank you cards is something that a lot of people do not do any longer, which is, or I don't want to say don't do, but there's very few people that actually do them based on the information I've been given by different industry professionals. And you can go to the Dollar Tree and pick up a package of 6 cards for $2. And it costs almost nothing, but it means a whole lot. Now, I will say this. If you are doing a handwritten thank you card, your handwriting better be legible. Okay. So, what I will do if I have a very important thank you card to write, I will write the message on a separate piece of paper. So that way I'm not thinking about what I want to write as I'm writing. I am literally just copying the words I've already written. And then when I'm copying the words, I can be more intentional about my handwriting to make sure it's more professional and more legible. Okay. Then we also have the STAR method. Okay. The STAR method, it's all capital letters, so it is an acronym. It stands for situation, task, action, and result. Okay. So this is a good way to answer any what we call a behavioral question. Okay. So in the interview process, we have behavioral questions. How are you going to behave in a specific situation? Informational gathering questions. So questions about like your past history, your past experiences, information about you as an individual. We also have rapport building questions. So rapport building is things like maybe kind of helping somebody be a little bit more at ease, building a relationship, a professional relationship with that person, to help them kind of feel a little bit more comfortable in that situation. With the behavioral questions, typically you're going to start with a phrase similar to, tell me about a time when. Okay. So tell me about a time when you experienced a challenge on the job. So what you need to think about, and this is something you can absolutely plan ahead for, okay, is your STAR response. What is the situation? Tell me the details of what's happened. What task did you have to do? What action did you take to achieve that task? And then what were the results? Okay. The one area that a lot of people leave out is the result. Okay. So people will be very easy to tell you about the description or the details about the event, what they had to do and what they did, but really what this person is trying to ask about is the result. What was the result of your actions? Was the conflict resolved? Did you achieve your goal? Okay. They want to know what the results of the situation paints the picture, the task you had to accomplish, what you did, what actions you took, and then ultimately what the results of that is. Okay. So in your homework assignment, for the STAR interview responses, I'll give you a question, and then you're going to work through each of the steps, the S, T, the A, and the R. It's helpful for you to write these things down because then it allows you to have these scenarios in your head. Okay. Any questions about the STAR method? So situation, task, action, and results. All right. So this is a link or something that I pulled off of LinkedIn a little over 5 years ago. And I thought it was really interesting about resumes. And as you are working with different individuals and as you are progressing through your career, one of the pieces of information that a lot of industry professionals talk about with my students when we go on field trips or things like that is the concept of not forgetting to look back and provide assistance to people that are behind you. Because as you grow in your career, that may be people that you've worked with, maybe help boost them up and give them some of that management experience and lead to a leadership career. Maybe it's someday you're a general manager of a hotel, and when somebody calls to say, hey, can we bring students to do a tour of your property? You can remember what it was like to go and do your own field trips when you were a student. So you never know really kind of who you're helping. Not that it really matters who you're helping, but sometimes it definitely pays off. So in this situation, somebody reached out to somebody on Facebook or on LinkedIn, said, I have $3.72 in my checking account. And so this person said, no problem. You don't have it in your budget to build and pay for a resume package. So there are people who their job is to help write your resume package for you. They get feedback. They're kind of like consultants. Okay. Um, so she gave her some free advice, giving her about 15 minutes about the resume, what they can change, what to keep. Okay. 2 days later, she calls me back and wishes to proceed in working with us. I could not help but ask what changed about your financial situation that you can afford to proceed. She said, my father is going to pay for my resume package. Turns out her dad is a hedge fund manager with way more than $3.72 in his checking account. And after she told him about the call, about her offering free services for 15 minutes, he wanted her to work with us. So since then, he has sent over 100 clients to this resume company, this client to this consulting company, mostly financial and Wall Street executives. So we are a business and revenue is important. We're also in the business of people. I think that's really important to remember as we go in through our careers that we are in the business of people, and how we can help support everybody. We can't give everybody free services because then we wouldn't be a business, right? And we won't stay in business. But if we have those opportunities to provide little pockets of any kind of support, maybe it's not financial support, maybe it's just a few minutes of time. Maybe it's somebody who is aspiring culinary chef student, and they ask you, "Can you go in and what we call stage?" Anybody know what stage means? It does mean work for free, but you're also getting some experience. Stage is not necessarily designed for you to work for a long period of time. It's usually an opportunity for it's either part of an interview process where you're going to go in, they're going to test to see if A, you have the skills that you say you have on your resume, and can you follow the recipes, and can you fit with the culture of the company. Okay. But also you can also request an opportunity to stage. I had students where back when the Intercontinental Hotel was being opened, but right before they opened, the chef was doing menu development and recipe testing. So this is happening during the summer. And so I put out a call to any of the students who wanted to go and be part of the menu development process. Originally, they were going to do it here on campus because their kitchens weren't open, but then their kitchens actually opened, so they did it at the hotel. And so I sent about 4 or 5 students to the hotel to help with the menu development and the recipe testing. Um, and I think at least one student got a job offer right then and there before they left that day. So those stage opportunities allows you to go in and see, okay, is this really the environment that I want to work in? Do I really want to work in fine dining? Do I want to work in more fast casual? Do I want to work in an independent? Do I want to work in a chain restaurant? Okay, so those different opportunities can help you, and you can, as you grow in your success. It's always important to remember to look back and offer a hand up, a helping hand up to those people that are behind you. Um, so what I want you to think as we wrap up this class, because today is our second to last, potentially last class service. Okay. I want you to think about what you want your brand to be. What have we talked about throughout this class, throughout the semester? How can you apply it to your professional career? And what can you do to impact your overall brand? Did I tell you about my pineapple story? Okay, so I think I have that here. Here we go. So that's the actual. I don't know if I had pictures or not with it the last time, but that's I did. Okay, cool. I couldn't remember. All right. So questions, comments, personal brand. What do you want people to associate with you when they hear your name? When they think about you, when they hear your name, what do you want them to associate with you? Okay. All right. So at this time, what we're going to do is